What's up, everyone? 7 October's here. Welcome to Nightmare on Sedgwick Avenue, the home of hip hop and horror. And today we have another dope guest who I've been trying to get on the podcast. So it finally we got everything to align. And he is the FilmOut SD program director of FilmOut SD, and his name is Michael McQuiggan. So, Michael, welcome to the podcast. How's your day going?
It's great. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll get right into it. I kind of want to
Okay.
just kind of pick your brain and like how
Yeah.
how did you fall in love with, like, cinema, horror in particular, because that's what we're here for, to talk about horror.
Okay.
But yeah, where that journey start for you?
Well, it started when I was really young. I'm going to say I can remember like 10 years old having, when my parents would go out of town or go to a game, hockey game or something, because I'm from Boston.
Hmm.
And so we would have babysitters and they would take us to the drive-in and we would see, I remember specifically seeing a double feature of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Last House on the Left.
Oh wow.
And I remember thinking, okay, well, it didn't seem as scary because we were in a car, but I mean, it stuck with me. Um, and then, that was around the same time that like The Exorcist came out. That kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah.
But I had maybe a little bit of a few nightmares from then. And that was like 72, 73, 74 around that time when, you know, you're not even a teenager then. But I love the babysitters for doing that.
Yeah.
And then, with all that starting, I started to read horror magazines. And my parents would be furious because, I was supposed to be reading like Sports Illustrated or something like that. And so I would cut all these pictures out and hang them all over the top of my walls where the ceiling meets the top of the wall and
Mhm.
all these like really graphic images. And from there, it just, kind of spiraled. And at that point, in the mid 70s, horror was like quality horror was coming out. Like
Yeah.
I remember the one film that really stuck with me for the longest time was Carrie. That was my
Oh.
first exposure to like really loving horror. The other like Last House on the Left, Texas Chainsaw, Exorcist, I like those, but that one, Carrie, was one that I had to we had to sneak into in a theater, and it was a huge, 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 huge hit even back then. It's just as popular now as it was then. It never
Yeah.
went out of popularity. So that came out, and then there was like a string of all those huge movies, The Omen, and another one that stuck with me for a while was Burnt Offerings, and
Okay.
then later on as the 70s progressed, it was like Dawn of the Dead and all the classics. So that's where it all
Nice.
started. It was my babysitter's fault. Well, actually, they compliment now for
I know, right?
turning me on, and my parents were furious because they thought we were going to go see Willy Wonka and all the animated Disney films back in the day. But nope, that's what we saw.
That's pretty awesome.
It was
That's like
awesome.
it was like I felt like the golden. There's so many golden eras I feel in horror, because even like you talking about the '70s brought me back to all like I love The Omen too, like The Omen, Carrie for sure. Like those were some that I
I
loved in the
love those
'70s.
movies.
Yeah.
I even
Um.
like Omen too.
Oh yeah. I feel like it was a solid trilogy. Even the third one with Sam O'Neill, like I think it was decent.
Yeah,
Like yeah.
yeah, I'm always
um.
down with watching those films
Yeah.
anytime.
Yeah, and it has like iconic scenes and like lines that, like, for me, like the Omen, like the head roll when that guy gets cut with like the glass or
Yeah,
whatever. Oh my
David
God.
Warner. That's
Yes.
awesome. Oh, with another film in that time that really stuck with me, it freaked me out a little bit, was Don't Look Now. Um,
Oh yeah.
with the girl who drowns at the beginning with Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie, and
Yeah.
then they go to Italy and that whole thing I won't reveal what the killer is, but that flipped me out. The face and the little red raincoat, and it was awesome.
Yeah, yeah, those are classics for sure. That's a time, like a time to like be living in for sure. Like that's pretty cool. And what about like, so when I introduced you, obviously, like I was talking about like that you're the program director for Film Out. How did that journey like come about? Like, how did you become the program director, and what's Film Out about for those that might not be familiar with it?
FilmOut is the LGBTQ film festival in San Diego, and it's been around. It seems like it's been around for 100 years. That's how long I feel like I've been involved. But we actually just had our 24th anniversary. Next year is the 25th. But
Oh, nice.
how I got started in it. I had always been involved where I lived, like in Boston and Phoenix. I was always interested in film festivals, so I'd kind of volunteer as just a regular volunteer for those festivals. And then when I moved to San Diego, there really wasn't anything happening that I remember at that point. So what I would do is I would drive up to LA, and their festival was called Outfest, and so I kind of did that for a while. There, FilmOut started in San Diego. My friend Joe Forelli, who FilmOut was his thesis project for SDSU.
Oh wow.
So he had to do a festival for I think for a few years as part of his as his thesis, and then it kind of dropped off for a little while. And in the meantime, that's when I was going to LA. And then I saw that they were kind of relaunching film. Joe was relaunching Film Out with his friend Krista back in San Diego. I'm like, oh, I want to kind of get involved in that. I already kind of knew what I was doing because of volunteering for a few years up in LA at Outfest. So we relaunched. What happened was instead of relaunching Film Out, Outfest in LA decided they wanted to do an Outfest San Diego branch. So we said, okay, so we all got together, did that for a couple of years. So it wasn't really Film Out, even though it was the same originators. And so what happened was, I ended up being volunteer coordinator. That Joe was executive director, program director. Krista was also festival director, and in title only because Outfest kind of really wanted to control what we screened. They would take suggestions, but we really had the roles, but we didn't have any input. And so finally, after a couple of years, we were like, this is bullshit. And so we decided we would cut ties with Outfest and relaunch Film Out. And that we relaunched Film Out in the meantime, Joe moved back. Joe moved from San Diego to Buffalo. And so it was Krista and I left. So I took on the role of program director, and she was executive director. And we relaunched it in 2004 again as Film Out. And in the meantime, Outfest completely erased our history of having a festival for 3 years. So there's no record of that. I luckily have the programs, so we count those in the years since we were involved. But so then, we just relaunched it in 2004. We relaunched a block of films at the San Diego Film Festival. It was my first time programming ever, so they gave us 3 films to program at their festival.
Yeah.
And they did really well. And one of the films I programmed won the audience award. They weren't happy about that. So then after that, that's when we initially went back. When we relaunched, we went to MOPA initially, and then we kind of outgrew MOPA. Then we went to the Ken Cinema over in Kensington, which is gone.
Yeah.
And then that's 400 seats, and we outgrew that. And so then for years, we were over at the North Park Theater, which is now the Observatory. And we were there for a long time until they were sold, and Live Nation picked them up and kind of gutted the theater and took the seats out. And we did the festival there for a few years, but they didn't have any equipment, so we would have to rent equipment. And then it got to the point where everything was on DCP, as you know, and so they don't have a DCP capability. So then we had to relaunch the festival again. But in the meantime, the Ken closed, so we had to restructure, and now we're back in Balboa Park at MOPA and the Natural History Museum. So that's pretty much in a nutshell of how it all went down.
Oh wow. Well, congrats on the 24 years, because that's a lot. And
It's
it's
crazy.
been a journey, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's awesome though. And what was like, I know you kind of mentioned it a little bit, obviously, like it's LGBTQ plus films. But what was the vision of like Film Out, like when it first started versus like maybe where it is now? Like what's the goal for you for Film Out?
The goal is just to bring these films to San Diego, because more than likely most of them, I would say maybe 75% of them will only play the festival circuit, and then really kind of you never hear from them again unless some of them will get theatrical release, and a few will go streaming. But it's the only chance really to support these filmmakers to see their films, in the theater. And that's still the goal, pretty much. To still, it's a challenge now because of a lot of people kind of wanting to watch, on their phones or on their tablets. But there are still people that actually want to go to festivals. So it was a little bit challenging during COVID. Um, because everyone we tried doing an online version one year and it did okay, but there's nothing like
Yeah, in
seeing
person.
movies in the theater with a bunch.
Yeah.
And as you know, I like to program as many genres of queer cinema as I can. So that's why I always want to throw some horror in there because they're
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I wish I could do the whole entire festival with horror features
Yeah.
and shorts if they're available. So I can always kind of put a few in there every year and kind of do it on a Friday late night or Saturday night and kind of make it a thing. And they do well, which I was
Yeah.
surprised because there are gay horror fans out there.
Yeah, that's a whole community too. Yeah, I feel like I mean it's like
I
horror
know.
is for like all of us that don't fit in, right? That it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. So I think that it's a huge audience for sure. And I loved actually talking about like the last one I just went to where you guys screened a couple of horror shorts and horror movies, and my favorite one, and I haven't done a review yet, but was The Judgment, that Egyptian horror one. Like I
That is
love
so
that.
good.
That was really good. I really loved that one. Yeah.
I tried to get that. That was, that pretty much played a lot of festivals, and then it kind of went off the radar. But I was always aware. I'm like, no. And plus, it's shot beautifully, so I wanted to see that
Yeah.
in the theater. So I found a slot for it, and we were lucky to have the lead actor come down. And that's a good thing when we can have the talent come down, which
Yeah.
is more and more and more every year. We're lucky because then the audience can engage.
Yeah.
This
Yeah, I
year they
love
all
that.
came, so
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. Like like finding films that you never will actually be able to like see or like that. I think is always dope. And then because it's word of mouth too. Like let's say somebody goes to one of your screenings and then they do a review and then it kind of also helps like the art, like the directors, cast, all that to like kind of get more traction on that film.
exactly.
Yeah.
And in addition to the festival, we also, to keep our brand alive, we used to do monthly films every month, but now we kind of do every other month because it's so expensive to rent theaters and get insurance and to get rights for the films and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I think we did 8 this year. We did 8, and those I'm more drawn to doing like more of cult films that anyone can come to. So I like to kind of mix it up. I'll do some gay titles, but then I also want to throw some curveballs in there, like I'm doing next Wednesday.
Yeah.
So which should be interesting. But no, I like to mix it up, and it's sometimes there's people that come to the festival and the monthlies, but you never know from the monthlies because they're different titles.
Yeah.
So it depends. Well, maybe we'll do a musical, or we'll do another horror, or we'll do action, or we'll do exploitation cinema. I kind of want to just mix it up and kind of have that kind of separate from the festival. I want to do these other films, and I kind of want to see what I want to see too. So
Yeah.
I
That's
know there are
awesome.
people out there, but
Yeah.
it's a
Uh,
challenge sometimes getting them to come.
it is, but I love like that you're doing that because there's so many different, like you guys, Film Geeks, as the Popcorn Reef. I love seeing that. Like it's a little bit for everybody, different audiences.
Yeah.
And kind of touching actually on what you were talking about the next screening you're having. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on too is to help promote and put the word out there. So are you able to talk about the event coming up on October 16th at Landmark Central
Yeah.
Cinemas?
So we're doing. I always try to do a double feature for Halloween. We didn't do it the last year. I forget what. I think we just showed the 4K restoration of Lost Boys or something. But this year I was like, I'm gonna go back old school, and I was kind of on the fence. Should I do 2 classic slashers, or maybe just do one? And couldn't figure it out. But then the Andy Warhol movies, the Paul Morrissey films, Flesh for Frankenstein and Blood for Dracula, as Beth will tell you, I've been wanting to show them since they were restored, I think, by Vinegar Syndrome. And so, I bought them, and they're available on DCP, and they look beautiful. And I've been wanting to show them for like 2 years, and then finally I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. Let me just do it. And if we'll see how it does. And so they look beautiful. And then I had the option of the first one's gonna be we're gonna show Flesh for Frankenstein in 3D first, old school 3D. So it's with the blue and the red glasses, and I bought 250 pairs of those, and so I'm excited to see. I've never seen it in 3D. They did have the 2D version of it restored in 4K, but I was like, you know what? It's kind of gimmicky, so let's just do the 3D. It's something different. We'll see how people like it. I'm not expecting the 3D to blow anyone away, but it will be fun.
Yeah.
And then we'll follow that up with Blood for Dracula, which is not in 3D, never was. So I hope people come and support genre cinema and support film out and support horror and those movies. I haven't seen them since maybe I saw them back in the day a lot when they first came out on VHS, but they were pan and scanned and they looked god awful. But they're both shot on widescreen and they're both restored and they pop. So
Nice.
it's gonna be fun to see it.
That's pretty dope. It would be my first time watching both because I've
Oh,
never
ever?
seen. No, yeah, I've never seen them, and
But
I heard
yeah,
it's
this is
really fun.
definitely it's gonna be an interesting. We'll see how what the attendances be. I think right now I think we've maybe sold half, which is more than I thought we were because this kind of
Nice.
stuff in San Diego sometimes it's hard to get people to come to see kind of genre stuff, but I'm excited to see it. I looked at when the theater was putting. I wanted to see the 3D what it would look like before. I don't want to
Yeah.
commit to it. And when the credits were a little bit rough, but then once you get into it, it looks it's different than what 3D is now for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to show 3 trailers of early 80 because 3D came back in the early 80s, early
Yeah.
to mid 80s was a huge thing. And so I'm showing trailers of 3 other horror movies that came out around that, about 10 years after these films that were, that 3D hadn't even improved really in those 10 years.
Yeah.
But it's going to be fun. The trailers aren't in 3D, but
Uh-huh.
you can tell that they were made for 3D.
3D.
You're going to love it.
Yeah. I just think about right now like Jason, like Friday the 13th Part 3.
That's one of the trailers I'm going to
Yeah.
show.
Or like Jaws. All these, yeah, all
Yep.
these 3D ones that came out back in the day.
The 3D
That's
ones I
awesome.
picked are pretty interesting for trailers. I don't know, maybe you've probably seen, well, you saw that one, and there's, what are the ones that I picked? I can't remember. But there's 2 other trailers. I think maybe you won't have
Maybe
heard
was it
of
My
one of
Bloody
them, but
Valentine? I'm trying to think of like different ones that
that
were in
was like
3D.
early 2000s remake, I think. But
Oh yeah,
the
because
other
the old one
two are like,
wasn't. Yeah, the old
what?
one was not. All right, it was in 3D.
No, no.
No, yeah,
That's one of my
that's
favorite
true.
movies, actually. I have the T-shirt on.
Oh, nice.
I lo- I
That's a good
love.
movie.
I was lucky because when I was in high school was when all those slasher movies started coming out. So
Yeah,
I was lucky to see all of those in the theater back in the day, in the early 80s, late
that's
70s,
awesome.
early 80s. It was so amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, like mine's like just VHSs or like after the fact, like rewatching them now on the big screen. Like, but that's pretty awesome. It kind of leads to my next question. So I'll give you a choice this time because we're talking about like vampires, right? The vampire flicks that we're gonna watch one of them next week. You can either do your top 5 horror films, any genre, subgenre, or top 5 vampire movies. I don't know which one you want to do.
Let me think of my top 5 horror. Oh my God, that's so hard.
I know.
Um, I like anything. Well, obviously, I love Car. I was obsessed with Brian De Palma as a kid. I loved anything Brian De Palma. I loved Sisters and Phantom of the Paradise, and of course Carrie and The Fury and Dress to Kill and Blowout and all that kind of stuff. That early De Palma stuff was just amazing. And Obsession.
Yeah.
And then of course John Carpenter with Halloween. That was a movie that was like when I said how huge of a hit Carrie was, and when Halloween came out 2 years later, that was a huge hit even then too. Back in the day, that's one that never left. But that was, you look back, Halloween's really dated now. As far as seeing that with an audience, it's kind of interesting for people who have never seen it because people forget that was one of the first,
That's true.
and then they drop the knife all the time. You like pick up the knife, blah blah blah, and no one had ever done that before. So, but top 5 vampire movies. Um, I'm trying to think what's. I love Near Dark.
Oh, I love that one.
I like I didn't like the Lost Boys when I initially saw it in the theater. I was like meh, but over the years I really like it now.
Yeah.
I like. I'm trying to think what else. Same thing with Interview with the Vampire. Was I didn't like it when I first saw it. Now I
Same.
can deal with it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to think what other vampire. Martin was good. The George Romero film Martin's good. Um, yeah, I don't know if I can think of any other ones that.
Salem's Lot, maybe like the old
Oh, I
school,
like just
right?
how funny that you say that. I like that miniseries was pretty good back in the day. The original one with David Soul, and I just watched it recently so I could prepare myself to watch
The new
the
one.
remake
Oh God.
on HBO two
I
nights
still gotta
ago.
watch that one, but I haven't heard good things at all.
It's a poor edit. I think
Yeah.
I think it was a friend of mine told me that they had filmed a 3 hour version, so that might be
Yeah.
a longer cut, which would make sense because it's just so choppy. There was like maybe the last 20 minutes were okay, but it was like it was a poor edit.
Yeah. That's what I heard. Yeah, that same thing, like from other people, that it just felt like it was like some scenes were cut off
Yeah,
just to
I
make it
didn't
short.
hate it. I didn't. It was just meh. I'd never watch it again.
Yeah.
But
Now I'm debating if I should waste my time, but we'll see. I might just
you
check it out
probably
just
should
to
just
see it.
watch it just to watch
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I hear a lot of bad reviews, bad, I'll go expecting to hate it. I'm like, oh, it was okay.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
Alrighty.
but
So
man, it was just awesome to grow up around that time with all that stuff coming out in the early '80s.
yeah, what was like your favorite like film to go
Slasher.
see in theaters? Maybe like that you can remember, like the your best experience as a kid or even a
Um,
teenager.
Teenager. We would all go every week and see whatever. There was a slasher every week, so it would be like Terror Train or He Knows You're Alone or Happy Birthday to Me or Curtains and Graduation Day and the Boogans and Silent Scream and the
Oh,
Funhouse. They just never ended. There was always, and
yeah.
we would go as a group, and they were always packed. It was fun, or we'd go see them at the drive-in. But I'm trying to think what I had the most fun. The most fun in the theater. Oh, the first time probably with the audience that I had probably the most fun
Hmm.
was seeing Alien
Oh, that's
because
awesome.
that had nothing like that had ever been seen before. So that was when I remember where like the audience was like went ballistic. So that's a good memory. Um, and I'm trying to think what else would freak people out.
Yeah, was there anything that made you like want to leave the theater or anything like, how back in the day it was like, oh, either leave the theater or like, vomit or something, like anything crazy like that? Did you
The
ever
only thing
have
that
like,
used to make me kind of gross me out were like the Italian films like Pieces and House by the Cemetery and The Beyond and The Gates of Hell, all that kind of stuff when they would like vomit organs and stuff. I was like,
yeah,
ugh. Or cannibalism, Cannibal
yeah,
Apocalypse, or it was those kind of gross me out. Like, bleh. Or Zombie, but yeah, they were kind of nasty. But you know what's really funny? The only movies that as a kid that like really scared me back in the day, you might not you won't remember this, but did these like ABC movie of the week. And they always did a genre film for like 7 years or something. And there were a few there that to this day, when I think about it, I was like, that scared the fuck out of me. And it was just a regular TV movie, but they always had like these older stars that were kind of past their heyday, but they would do TV movies and they were always
yeah.
horror. And there was this one for years and years I never knew what it was because it flipped me out so much. I didn't know the name because I was so young. And then a few years ago, I Googled something to try to find it and I found it. And it was called The Screaming Woman.
Oh
And
yeah,
it
I
was with
remember that
Olivia
one.
de Havilland and Joseph Cotton. And that movie, I can still see images in my head of watching that at that age.
Hmm.
So that one's freaked me out. And then there was another one called Satan's Triangle. And that was with Kim Novak. And like the last scene of that movie, I had nightmares for months, months. And it's nothing. It's still creepy now. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. Even though it's a TV movie, but just for the last 5 minutes, what happens to her flipped me out as a kid.
Okay, I have to check it out.
Flipped
I
me
haven't seen
out.
those.
You
That's
can see them
awesome.
on. They're on. I think they're
Probably
online. I think
YouTube,
you.
probably YouTube or something, right?
Yeah, But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
those flipped me out.
Yeah, they had a lot of cool like TV movies back in the day, honestly. Like I feel like channels were so like USA, all these different ones. Like I still have
Yeah, even
VHS in the
before that, it
backyard.
was like ABC.
Oh yeah.
They would do the Night Stalker and the Night Strangler, and
That's true,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
they were
And
so good.
what about if you could watch like a horror movie like all over again, like for the first time, what movie would it be?
Like, for the first time to see what it would be like now.
Yeah, like maybe like just to like kind of experience that all over again. Like I don't know, what would be
Um,
your pick?
Maybe Dawn of the Dead. Maybe
Okay.
that was another one that was really that came out the same year as Halloween, and that was kind of a big deal then too. But I remember that was another one with the audience. That stuff was all new. I mean, you had Night of the Living Dead like 10 years before that, but it was black and white and it wasn't that graphic. But Dawn of the Dead took it to a whole nother level. And then I kind of got into like psychological thrillers. Like I loved watching, like I mentioned, I loved watching Dress to Kill
That's
and
a good
Eyes
one.
of Laura Mars. And I kind of liked all when it was always like I liked strong female protagonists
Hmm.
back then. So even with slasher films, when they were good ones, like Visiting Hours, for example, or when there's a strong female role, I was more drawn to that
Okay.
than the typical. It was more relatable. Especially throw a hooker in there and everything's great.
And what about if you could be like in any horror movie, like which movie would you pick and what character would you be and why?
I would pick The Evil Dead and I would be Ash.
That's a good one.
I love
I love
that.
that movie. Yeah, that's a good one. And what advice would you give to maybe someone that's like trying to get into like screening films? Like what has been like I guess also like not just advice, but maybe like what has been some of your challenges and what has been the most rewarding doing what you do?
Well, I always tell people, like, when submissions open for FilmOut, our submission period is like 4 months, where anyone can can submit a film wherever they are. We use a platform which is pretty much used internationally called Film Freeway, and that's where filmmakers submit their films to me. And you know it's hard when you get like hundreds and hundreds of submissions and you have a lot of films that you have to turn down because we used to be a week long and now we're just 4 days. So I really need to streamline it and pick the best of the best, and it's
Yeah.
harder for shorts because I already kind of have an idea of where I'm going to go feature wise.
Hmm.
But as far as shorts, you have 100, 200, 300 shorts, and I used to try to do short tracks, but it was too much. And so now I'm really selective, and I tell filmmakers the key for getting into films, at least film festivals that are only 3, 4, 5 days. When they're 2 weeks, it's easier because they can do block after block after block of tracks. But I tell filmmakers the easiest thing to do to guarantee you to get into a festival, is make a short film. That's why it's called a short film. So when you get short films that are like 22, 25, 37, 42 minutes, is for me, since we're only 4 days, it's impossible to program because there's just no room. So I tell filmmakers, if you want to get into a festival, you have a better chance of making a film between 12 and 15 minutes or less, because those are easier to program in blocks, and they're also easier to program before a feature. So you have more chances of getting seen, because when you're 27, 28 minutes long, you're taking up 2, 3 movies sometimes. So
Yeah.
for smaller festivals, that's what I tell filmmakers. And then I especially, and I also tell them what really, there aren't that many horror shorts that are submitted that are queer horror shorts anyway. So make a queer horror short. And if you want to really get into festivals, include a non-binary character, or include a trans character, or include a bi character, and then you have more chance because you're showing more diversity and representation. And those are just a few tips. And I also tell them, I see so many short films from all over the world, and they're well directed, they're well written, they're well edited, they look beautiful, but then the filmmakers hire their friends, and the friends can't act.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, only hire friends who know how to act. Don't put them in your movie because they're your friend. You were eliminated because the movie was okay, but the acting sucked. I'm not showing it. And then you can be experimental up to a certain point, but you really have to festivals need to make money. So if we're going to show too many obscure experimental festivals, unless they're geared towards that,
Mhm.
people that don't come to the festival and then come and see these films are turned off thinking that's what we only show, and so they don't want to come back. So you have to be really careful because the bottom line is the festivals need to make money or they're just gone, and
Yeah.
they are dropping off. Festivals are dropping off left and right, and it's extremely hard. For filmmakers, I know they need to raise money to make their films, but and we so like same thing with us. We need to raise sponsorship dollars to put on the festival. And you know what? For Latino Film Festival, Jewish Film Festival, Asian Film Festival, the San Diego International Film Festival, a little bit easier because when we go after since we're LGBTQ, sometimes it's hard. People don't want to give because of the stigma or whatnot, or they want to do anonymous, which is fine. But
Mhm.
it's a little bit of it's a struggle. So even like for like national sponsors, it's a struggle. But somehow we managed to pull it off. But our festival costs for 4 days. It costs us $100,000.
Oh wow, that's
It's
crazy.
a lot because you got to
Yeah.
take into consideration renting the venues, the fees, the insurance, the programs, the tickets, all of that, hotels, flights, all that kind of stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah,
So
that is pretty crazy, but yeah, I'm glad that obviously it exists, and I'm glad you guys
yeah,
are doing what you're doing, and showcasing films that might not get like the limelight it deserves
yeah,
sometimes. So that's really dope.
I love
I
doing
mean,
that.
yeah, and I was gonna say before we get out of here, I usually like to end it with this question as far as like and you can choose either creatively or personally, but like what kind of legacy would you like to leave behind? And it doesn't have to be just with film out, just in general.
It's funny that you say that because I always think, what is going to be the legacy of Film Out? Because, and people know this, that if I were to leave, it's over. And so, I don't want that to happen because, there's decades of work there,
Yeah.
but, we're a nonprofit. There's no money there. We don't get paid minimally, like minimally. That's why we all have other careers. And this is
Hmm.
just kind of fun, but we want to keep it alive. But I just hope, I don't know. I always think, are people going to miss it if it's not here? Are they going to even know? We get people that come to the festival every year that have never heard of it, and they live in San Diego for 10 years, 15 years. So that's baffling sometimes. But I just, I don't want people to forget it. So I've actually donated I had 10 boxes in my closet of just everything from all the years of festival. And we donated everything to the Lambda archives. So there's at least
Mm.
an archive of all of the stuff for Film Out. And sometimes they showcase it in their, when they put displays up wherever they travel to.
Mhm.
But so I'm thankful for that. So I also think that maybe I'm going to do another kind of a festival and maybe just do kind of a genre, like kind of like what Popcorn Reef and Film Geeks SD do, and what Etta does it with Femtasia is maybe keep it but do a spin on it. And I'm still going to try. I don't know if you were here. Did you come to the when I did that 80s exploitation cinema
Oh
triple
yeah.
feature a couple
Yes. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I'm more down as long, I can keep and film out if I can do those additionally on the side. So I think I'm going to be doing another one of those, even though we
Nice.
lost money.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to do that, even if it's for me to keep my sanity. So I think in January I'm going to do a slasherama.
Oh,
We did it
nice.
one time way back in the day. We used to do marathons of 6 films. We would do it twice a year at Film Out when we were at the observatory,
Nice.
and those were fun and they were always packed. So I'm like, I don't know what's happened. Why aren't people coming now as much as they were like 10 years ago even? So keep your eyes out for January. It's going to either be Thrillerama or Slasherama.
Oh, nice. I'm excited for that. Well, man, thank you so much for like taking the time and talking
You're
a little bit
welcome.
about your journey in film out and just like cinema and horror. Anything else that you want to plug in before we get out of here?
I'm trying to decide. I'm not sure what I'm going to do for December yet, but I think for our monthly in December, I'm going to do something completely different. And I'm thinking, depending on what the quality of the film is, there's this, we're going to call it Disco December. And the
Nice.
film is from 1978, and it's called Thank God It's Friday. And it's a big, it's kind of like the West Coast version of what the West Coast thought Saturday Night Fever would be for the West Coast, although they don't pull it off. But it has like really early appearances of Jeff Goldblum and
Ooh.
Deborah Winger, and it's the only movie that Donna Summer ever appeared in, and the film won an Oscar for Best
Oh.
Song. So we might do a kind of a disco contest and kind of bring that. That's what as of today, that's what we're going to screen. Um, but I'm waiting to see what it sounds like first because there might be an issue with the sound for the movie, and if the sound is bad for that for a loud musical with a lot of disco music, I won't show it unless it's the sound is on point. So that's what's coming up.
Nice. And where's that going to be at? Which theater?
That'll be at Landmark. All the monthly films are at the Landmark Hillcrest. So
Okay.
for those of you who are watching, come see Flesh for Frankenstein in 3D, and then stay and see Blood for Dracula, both starring Udo Kier and Joe D'Alessandro, and directed by Paul Morrissey, and Andy Warhol threw his name on there. So they're
That's
fun.
awesome.
You'll never see it again. They won't play ever again in San Diego, as far as I know. So now's your chance to see those films on the big screen, restored.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.